you have taken like such an incredibly strong role in the whole Hire Different movement and disability inclusion. Why are you so passionate about this movement?
Why I care so much and why I give so much of my time to this is because it's impossible not to. It's such a simple proposition. I sit in an executive role within an advertising industry where we are looking for talent, when we are looking for original ideas, and when we are looking for innovation to come from new places. It's a population that is almost impossible to believe has been left out of the equation for so long. So to look at an entire population of individuals who are intelligent, who are creative, who have a desire to work. So to me, it was a very simple proposition. It's smart business to be working and trying to hire a population of people who want to work.
I love that. I think that's so important. So I think bouncing off of that, I think our questions are, especially this month, what are some ways that you think there has been progress for hiring people with disabilities? And then also, maybe are there any critiques that haven't happened yet? And how can we work towards making more progress right now?
Sure. So I think that we definitely have not made enough progress in the entire fight of bringing people with IDD or the IDD community into the workforce. I mean, the number is just too hard to believe that we've done a great job, right? I mean, you know, in 75 years, 85% of the people are still unemployed. That can't be a success criteria. You know, that can't be considered successful. However, I do believe that we have made some great strides recently, and I think Creative Spirit is one of the greatest examples that I can give to that for many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is that we begin to change the model. So you can't just continue to forge forward and continue to fail doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so what's very smart is when we look at Creative Spirit and look at how the model has changed, look at how we are helping the individual be prepared for the interview, be prepared for the position, and continue to support the individual in that role, and how we actually support the company and the hiring company to prepare for the interview, to prepare for the role, and to continue to support. That's a new model. Like I've never seen that model used. And I think that the progress we will make in our small world of trying to move Creative Spirit and hiring from the Creative Spirit will also become a movement where hiring outside will just be the way that we bring more people in. It's a much more inclusive environment that way, and it allows candidates to show their strengths from day one versus having to get lucky that you will fit that role. It prepares us to learn together. It prepares us to grow together, and it prepares people with intellectual disabilities to have an equal footing the first day, as well as multiple, chapters within their career.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and I think both Malcolm and I agree that the lifelong coaching is probably one of the most incredible services and resources, and we both tap into it. So agreed, 1,000%. All right, how many do we have more? Do you want me to do the next one, Malcolm, or do you want to do the other one?
I could do the next one.
All right.
We're up to number third.
Yes, sir.
So my question is just, you feel that there's exclusion of people, like why it is that there's exclusion of people with IDDs when it comes to employment, and why that's happening in society, why there's this stigma against people with IDDs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, it's a hard question I can't answer for everybody why they're excluded. I don't think it's on purpose. I think is the most important. I don't think that any organization sits here and says, I don't want to employ someone who has an intellectual disability. I think it actually is more of an oversight. Because I think that, again, going back to the new model of what I was saying before of if you actually identify what the disability is to allow it actually to be part of the conversation from the start, we can actually find the perfect job to allow it to be a match, and the employer and the employee that now actually can move forward. When you have a physical disability, it's very easy to be able to look at a person and say, I can accommodate or I can't accommodate, right? And I can change the accommodation because it's right there from day one of the interview, right? It's very different I think, with a lot of the candidates with IDDs, because everyone is a little bit different. It's not as simple as a physical disability. And I think that, again, by working with the HR department and working with the individual and being able to match skill sets, you bring the best of the company and the best of the individual together. And I think when HR departments start becoming more and more comfortable with hiring and supporting, they actually realize that you get more diversity, you get more skills than you would otherwise, and it's not going to be something that they exclude, but in the opposite is going to happen, is they're going to include it because it actually makes a more well-rounded team, it makes a more well-rounded ideation, and it makes the company better and stronger.
Yeah, and do you think unconscious bias factors into it, though? There's prejudices against people with IEDs, but they don't really realize that they're. Of
course, I mean, unconscious bias is absolutely and that's why I was saying before. So sorry, without stating it that way, yes, and unconscious bias is obviously what's happening many places, and people just don't realize it. And so by bringing together more awareness, like we're doing here, and what a lot of diversity and inclusion initiatives are trying to handle is to bring this to light, to highlight individuals with IDDs, to show how talented they are, how creative they are, how talented these individuals are, in order to change that, right? In order to change that perception, in order to make it that much easier for an employer to be open-minded, and in general to be able to have the ability to hire individuals for these different jobs.
Yeah, and do you think there's something about this moment in time that we're in right now that makes this more critical because of looking at COVID and how it's impacting employment? Is there something about right now where it's there's more urgency?
Well, I think there's more urgency, but there's also more opportunity, right? I mean, I think technology becomes a huge leveler here right now, because there's a lot of issues that come with just like there's a lot of opportunities that now all of a sudden happen with COVID that allow people to work from home, that allow the computer and technology in general to enable all of us. And so I think there's a huge opportunity that employers in general are looking at the ability that you can work anywhere, you can work from anywhere. You don't have to physically be in offices. That opens up the opportunity for a lot of people, and a lot of people who have the inability to get to wherever the offices would be and things like that. So I think it's actually a huge opportunity for hiring right now as a company and as an industry, as we start opening up to hire again. I mean, obviously, the unemployment rate, it was also going to happen just because of the economy. That's different. But as now all of a sudden companies relook at, like Microsoft just came back and said everybody can work from home even after, I think that, even after the pandemic is over, that people aren't going to have to go back to offices. I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for candidates, and that companies hopefully will be able to look past their past hiring practices and begin to open up their doors to people with IDDs in a bigger way. I mean, I think we're in a perfect position for that to happen. And I think, and I also want to say another thing on this, is that I feel that that it's more than just the change of landscape for people with disabilities because of COVID. I think there's also this whole feeling of diversity and inclusion in general that has become spotlighted in our world, and it's done from race, and it's and I think that it's super important not to forget about that highlight right now, where every single company is hiring a diversity and inclusion, lead. Every company right now is answering to their employees and to their boards and to their to their companies and to their clients on what is their plan right now for diversity and inclusion. So everybody's being held to a higher standard right now, and it's going to be super important for Creative Spirit and for people with IDDs to be part of that conversation. It's probably more urgent than any other time right now, because there's a spotlight right now on diversity and inclusion. And why would you, when you're talking about a group of people that have such amazing skill sets, why would you turn these people away? Right? You know what I mean? Like, these people can be more highlighted than they've ever been highlighted before.
So do you think the change is going to be permanent in the way that companies operate and hire people, and in terms of their attitude, or like even after the pandemic, do you think there's going to be like a permanent impact?
I think, like anything, there's a pendulum that will go one direction very far, and then it's going to level out someplace in between. And I think I do believe that the change in where people can work from and in the environment they work in will never go back to what it was before. So I do believe, and I believe for some companies it will completely go back to, they won't have learned anything from it, and other companies I think will completely stay home. And I think I think the majority of people, that change there will be critical change that will have occurred, and I think it will be for the betterment of candidates.
I agree. I mean, I hope that something good can come out of this, and that there could be some silver lining in improving employment and the way companies look at things. And I'll just hand it back to Joanna for other questions.
Yeah, I think the one last question, which I'm kind of going to change how we wrote this, because I think, Mari, you speak so eloquently from your own experience, and I want to give you room to ad-lib how you want. But I guess like the direction that I think this question is trying to go in is really, what can we leverage to maintain momentum for this conversation? How can we maintain momentum for Hire Different? And what do you see as the biggest assets for not only candidates but employers of this movement to take away?
I think the most important thing that we need to continue to stress to employers and to companies who are trying to have a diverse and a more inclusive environment is that diversity needs to happen in order to have diverse ideas come to their company. Diversity of talent offers those ideas, right? If you bring more diversity into your company, it allows for creativity, it allows for productivity, it allows for innovation. It is smart business to be working with a talent pool of people like people with intellectual disabilities, because they complete your team. They make us successful, because we talk about it, hashtag Hire Different, because they come at it in a different way. The same way that you want to hire racial backgrounds, why you want to hire from different experiences of where you've lived and your experiences in life. It's because everybody brings something different to the party. And if we don't allow a group of talent and intellect coming out of people with intellectual disabilities, you're just missing a huge part of the pie that our society needs to be complete. You can't have 1 in 5 people have an IDD and not have 1 in 5 people represented in a company, right, to address those people. I mean, it's a population you need to hire, and it's a population we need to speak to. You know what I mean? Like we have to balance our diversity and inclusion efforts with the inclusion of IDD candidates, because if not, we're not being inclusive. And we can't have a population in our company and in our industry and our nation at an 85% unemployment rate. It's too hard on the caretakers. It's too hard on our economy. It's too hard on our health system. It's not healthy for a group of individuals to be unemployed like that. It causes health risks. You're going to have depression. You're going to have bad health. You're going to have, you have caretakers that have to take care of these people. You have financial struggles because they can't, they have to be dependent on someone else. And everybody who wants to work should be allowed to work and have that independence and have that enjoyment of being successful and being included. And so for me, it's kind of a table stakes that it can't be something we stop thinking about. It's something that we must continue to push and that we must advance. And I think Creative Spirit could not be in a better position to help companies and help individuals connect and to drive this change.
So well said. I agree with all the above.
Well, you can take out the middle part, but yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. No, that was so well said. That was incredible. No, I love that. And I think this also drives at our final question here, which I think you'll really like as well, Mari. Oh my goodness. Mari.
You're not first.
I'm getting better. I'm going to get better. Mari. But what we've seen a lot from our research, especially around COVID and prior to COVID, honestly, and what we hope to see post-COVID, is if individuals are not able to be hired into, necessarily Fortune 500 companies, we have seen that they've been supported by the community in a variety of ways, whether that's being hired by a family member, a community member, starting their own businesses, teaching themselves skills. We were mentioning a little bit before, there's 2 products that I know about in terms of apps that were developed by dyslexics because they needed it to get by in life. And we talked about technology too, and I think with the rise of the digital nativeness of not only really everyone, but those that have been isolated, some of the first tools that we were given to succeed at school was a computer or a tablet. And that's only increasing as we see with, the present generation, because it's more accessible now. But my real question, and I think the heart of our final question here really is, what advice would you give to people with disabilities that are maybe trying to succeed as entrepreneurs or in their current roles within other organizations?
So just one piece of advice I'd give. So, I give the same advice to people with disabilities who are to try to succeed as I kind of do to a lot of people, even coming out of school in general, is that nothing is a stupid question, and you should be following your curiosity, right? So in the end of the day, the advice that I give to is, if something is really exciting to you, right, reach out to that person, right, and introduce yourself and ask for a meeting. It's the funniest thing, but you could write to 10 people, and if 2 people write back to you, it's 2 more people than you knew before, right? You don't be afraid to have that level of curiosity and to pursue it. There's a great line of learn from failures kind of thing. There is no failure, right? Like the idea that you can learn from every single thing you do only makes you smarter and makes you more ready for the next thing that happens, right? So my advice would really be curious, be forthcoming when reaching out, and don't be afraid to fail. And ultimately what that comes down to is the fact that allow people to help you, right? Like you're not in this alone, right? Like, I mean, having an intellectual disability is just one part of you, right? Everybody has a fault. Everybody has a flaw. Nobody is perfect. People don't hire because of one aspect. People hire for the totality of the person who is coming in. So be yourself, like, and more will come of it because of what you are than what you perceive you don't have, because that's the part they're going to hire you on, right? So, you know, it really comes down, I hire based on people's individual contribution that they can bring to my overall team to make it the most inclusive and creative forum to work within, right? So my advice to any person who's coming in with a disability is, you might have a disability, but you also have 1,000 other things to offer. Don't look at it as a fault. Look at it as just one element of what you have, right? And celebrate it, right? Because you bring so much more to the table.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? I mean, it's only one little element. So. And
it's mindset. And I think that's one thing we haven't heard from our interviews yet. And I think it's something that I fall back on in my personal life. But I think you and whoever you are vibrates and attracts a certain frequency of people that will be there to support you, whether it's your family, whether it's friends of family, whether it's peers that you meet in school, whether it's someone older than you that inspires you, that you don't necessarily have an immediate connection with, but you've reached out to. And I think it's so valuable to hear from an industry executive like yourself that is saying that. I think that the mindset is, why not? The mindset is, keep trying. And the mindset is, we will help you. That's how it seems to me, at least from what you just said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I think is so interesting is, you know, when we talk a lot of times I'll talk in a forum like with a lot of like women, and they talk about like, you know, how do women stand up in a man's world, right? It's the same type of thing. And, you know, you'll hear this a lot where you'll hear and say like, I want you as an individual to be, if you're shy, you know, I want you to be the most confident shy person. You know, if you are amazing at math, but you think that your reading skills are really, you know, fall short, I want to focus on the math skills and make you the strongest math. You know, the idea of basically embracing your strengths and making anything in your life a positive versus a negative, I think is the way that when our coaches talk to candidates and when we are training, you know, the employers, there's a big part of this, right? Is that idea of, we'll give you the support through Creative Spirit, but the other side of it is we're just going to make you the most confident person you are that happens to have an IDD, right? Like, it's not that I have an IDD and you're a confident person, right? It's the secondary part of it we're going to build up these people to succeed in business, and these candidates need to feel like they deserve this job as much as, and the employer should feel lucky to have them in the job, and it's secondarily, if not tertiary, right, that they have an IDD.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the challenge.
That's where I think if we can change the mindset of how you walk into that interview and how you're interviewing for that person, I think that it can happen really. I think that, you know, we were saying it before of like what needs to change. I think that's how that change happens, right? Is because you walk in and you almost 15 minutes into the meeting, and I've met you many times now, right? It's like, I don't think of you as the person with dyslexia. You know, I think of you as an intelligent woman, right, who I've watched her career now for the last 2 years, right? And I think that's what we need to, that's what every candidate deserves, is to have that ability to be able to just be recognized for, you know, I don't get, you know, it's not like I walk into a room and everybody recognizes me for my faults. They recognize me for what, you know, what I do every day. So everybody deserves that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things I've learned, even just in this interviewing process, which actually I think we should put in this article if we can, because just even listening, I think people also have to remember that sometimes it's not us, it's whoever you're talking to. And if you're not getting responses from one person, move on to someone else. You know what I mean? I think there's that resiliency where you're not always going to meet the person that's going to change your life that first time. But if you keep going in their direction, going with a recommendation, with a referral, with whatever it may be, with you see something on YouTube and you write in the comments section, like it can even be that simple.
Yeah, you're right.
I think there are people that will help you and there are those that won't. And focusing on the people that will help you is also an extreme it's a good way to frame your mind, because you're not going to come up against people that are always going to lift you up. But recognizing those that do, and Creative Spirit is absolutely one of those places that does, is also a gift that you can cultivate. And I think looking at everything in life where there's a spectrum, right, where you start at one place but you can grow, or you start with one strength and you ignore your weakness, or you don't focus on it as much. Whatever you focus on, it becomes reality. So that's my belief.
Another way of saying that also is a piece of advice that I would say to people is to build yourself a bench of support. Some people call it your personal board of directors. Everybody has a different way of talking about it, but there are just people in your life, and it can be a parent, it can be a teacher, it can be Creative Spirit, that will be your board of directors that are gonna help you navigate the rough waters, and going to celebrate you at your highs, and it's going to support you at your lows. And everybody, right, should have their board of directors, their bench, whatever you guys want to call it. But again, I think the most important thing that I would say as advice to people is that it's not because you have a disability, right? It's because everybody needs that in their life, right? And it will help you navigate your disability to get you a job. But it's not because you have a disability that you need that. If everybody needs that, right? And because you have a disability, it will just help you navigate those rough waters. Your bad days will be a little bit better, and your good days will just be celebrated a little bit more. And I think, for me, taking you out of the disability box, taking people out of the disability box and putting them in, and 100% recognizing that we are achieving something here for people with disabilities, but not thinking about it every day in that form, and just treating them as humans, treating them as employees, treating them as, money, people who are earning money every day and for their livelihood. Those are just sound business advice that I don't know if people get enough of, especially people who are just beginning their career of looking for a job and things like that. And sometimes this life coaches and life advice will take you really far on that as well.
I love that. Yeah. And you just made me think of one other thing that we were talking about, which was, individuals with IDDs don't necessarily have experience because they've never been given the shot. And a lot of time businesses are hiring individuals based off of their experiences. So that's a lot of the reason why I think people are getting excluded. So not only are we talking about flipping the way that we're hiring and the way we're training our candidates, but we're also talking about valuing productivity in a totally different way, right? Like, we're not just saying, you achieve no matter what. I mean, I think if you don't have experience, you're just like anyone else that doesn't have experience, and you start somewhere and you keep moving forward. And I
sure.
guess
lack of experience can only be changed by having some experience. So any experience, getting experience is the most important thing. As you said before, whether it's starting your own business, whether it's working for a smaller company, because an employer still needs to hire people who are going to make their company successful. So you need to get the experience wherever you can find the experience, and then that will build you to the good level of confidence to get the next job and get the next job. And there's nothing wrong with moving along, But again, technology does offer you a huge opportunity to learn and to get that experience. So we're in a really good place in that sense of opportunity.
Absolutely.
Look, at the end of the day, I think that Creative Spirit has built a new model for hiring I am so proud to be part of an organization working with our sponsors and the support to be able to make this connection between employees and employers. And I think that it is a model that can be expanded on. It's a model that can evolve because it is some of the most simple things can move the needle the most. And I think this new model of how you hire allows hiring different to be so easy. It's almost too easy of a proposition for an HR department or a hiring manager to say no to. And I think that's the ultimate compliment to a great new idea, is that it's so simple, right? It's just almost impossible to avoid.